You're part of this growing organization. There are a lot more inputs that start coming around. Everybody, as soon as the publication and the content starts to get a little bit more traction, everybody wants a piece. I would love to learn a little bit more about your process for handling that type of input, what that does with the creative development side.
Here's what I do. I create a form in Airtable. You can create a form in other places. You don't even need a form. I like a form for a reason I'll get to briefly. I'm very thoughtful about the questions that I ask my input givers. You always want to ask yourself, how prescriptive should I be in my question? So I'll give you an example. If I say to all of my input, like my key stakeholders in sales, hey, what content should we create? I'm going to get ideas across the board. And maybe that's what I want. Maybe I'm like in a zone where I just like need creativity and brainstorming and so like have lots of things flying. But maybe I kind of have a list of 10 things already. And what I really want is like a vote, or I want to be able to consolidate answers across a bunch of different teams. Or even I want to kind of limit the way some of my stakeholders are thinking about what my team does, because maybe in the past they've been confused about what we actually like own and can create. So in a case like that, I'm going to create like fields within my form that are select. I'm not going to give people like as much room. I still think it's a best practice to give people a like something else fill in the blank moment. But if you're prescriptive about topics, that can be a good place to start to like identify patterns and corral your answers. So at this point, I think we have 10 different sort of teams who we go to with our form. We ask them for their key initiatives, right? Because sometimes a team will be like, well, we're really focused on this, but it has nothing to do with you. And I'm like, oh, but it does. It does have to do with me. The second piece I ask them for is like, what do you think we like need to do? Like, what are the topics? What are the themes? Like, what are the most important messages that we can get across? Neither of those questions are asking people to like tell me what content to create. I'm thinking about this big picture. My team wants to look at inputs across the board to like keep me zoned out in this moment. And only then, once they've asked those questions, once they've answered those questions, they say, do you have specific support you need from my team this quarter? And like, please be as detailed as possible. I get my inputs back. Now, because I have them in a form, I'm able to look at them all in one, in this case, an Airtable base. And then from there, I meet with my teammates. So those folks come in and they've looked at all the inputs and now they say, here's what I think we should do. It's not just about like, hey, what do you think you should do in your pod? It's like, you've seen the patterns here. Like, what do you think your partners should do? What do you think we should all do here? What themes are emerging? So we have a big session together where everyone is kind of proposing what they think each team should work on. It's usually pretty clear by this point. It sort of reminds me of like when you give like a quarterly review to someone. If you're doing a good job keeping up with your partners, you've heard all of this stuff before. So we have that conversation. Again, like the patterns are usually pretty clear. Sometimes there are some things out of left field. Sometimes there's some ideas that we're like, oh, that's phenomenal. Like, we absolutely have to do that. Sometimes, to my earlier comment, there's things that we're like, oh, we already did that. Well, that's on us if they don't know that already exists, right? Like, right. That's not, it's not like they need to pay more attention. It's like we need to be more proactive about surfacing the content we create, or else why are we creating it? And then from there, we like kind of crank out our requirements. The most important part of our job on the operations end is creating predictability in what we deliver, right? So being super clear with our stakeholders about what we are producing, when it's coming, here's the date, here's where you can check it on in the calendar, and like you will know the status at every single moment. So like that's like, you know, so much of our job is around that like planning and then communicating our plan. I'm not sure I love it. I find this topic super dry. I would budget an hour at minimum to edit this piece. Oh man, I need to cut this in half. How much time do we have? Oh my gosh. Should I delete this? You read that first line. What else can you put in here? It might even take me an hour and a half or 2 hours to go through. Does this fit our brand voice?